NASA is about to attempt its boldest mission yet, but some experts warn it could go horribly wrong. Could this be humanity's deadliest gamble or the leap that changes everything? Hi, I'm Josh, and on today's episode of the Infographics Show, we're revealing the real reason why NASA is sending people back to the moon. In 2022, Artemis I was the dress rehearsal, an uncrewed flight designed to stress test the Orion capsule before they risked human lives. The mission was technically a success. The capsule went to the moon, orbited, and came back. It splashed down in the Pacific, and the NASA press releases were jubilant. But when the recovery teams hauled the capsule onto the deck of the USS Portland, engineers got a closer look at the bottom of the spacecraft, and the celebrations were cut short. The heat shield, the single most critical component for keeping the crew alive during re-entry, was a mess. Orion's heat shield is made from a material called Avcoat. It's designed to burn away as the capsule slams back through the Earth's atmosphere, sacrificing itself to protect what's inside. As the capsule hits the atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour, the friction generates temperatures up to 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The Avcoat is supposed to char, turn into gas, and carry the heat away from the ship. It's a sacrificial layer. On Artemis I, it didn't just char, it broke. Chunks of the shield, some as large as dinner plates, had ripped loose. The technical term is spalling. Instead of a smooth, eroded surface, the shield looked like a cratered moonscape. There were deep divots where the material had failed. Obviously, this wasn't supposed to happen. The model said the char would stay attached. But the reality said something else entirely, and it points to a fundamental flaw that NASA is choosing to ignore. The investigation revealed the culprit, the design itself. In the Apollo era, heat shields were made by injecting material into a honeycomb structure. It was labor-intensive, but the honeycomb shape kept the material contained. If one cell cracked, the crack stopped at the cell wall. For Orion, to save time and money, NASA switched to a block architecture. They manufactured large pieces of Avcoat and glued them onto the structure. But the new formulation was less permeable than the old stuff. When the heat hit it, gas built up inside of the material. It had nowhere to go but outward, and pieces of the shield exploded from the ship. It was a fundamental flaw in the material design. In a normal engineering culture, the solution would be obvious. You design a new shield, you go back to the drawing board, you fix the issue, and you build a new one, and then you test it again, without a crew. But NASA isn't doing that. In fact, they're doubling down on a strategy that some experts call certain death. The heat shield on the Artemis II capsule isn't just the same design, it is arguably worse. The Avcoat this time is thicker and less forgiving than the batch on the failed Artemis I. Replacing the shield would take years. It would require tearing the capsule apart and pushing the launch date back to 2027 or 2028. And in the current political climate, a 2-year delay is considered unacceptable. So NASA has made a choice. They are flying with the flawed shield. Their solution is not to fix the hardware, but to change how they fly it. They have altered the re-entry trajectory. They're planning to bring the capsule in at a shallower angle, a lofted entry, hoping to spread the heat out differently. This would keep the temperatures low enough to prevent the material from exploding. They're effectively trying to fly their way around a hardware defect. And for one former astronaut, this feels like a terrifying case of déjà vu. Dr. Charlie Camarda, a former astronaut who flew on the shuttle after the Columbia disaster, has been vocal about this. He knows what happens when NASA talks itself into accepting a flaw. He calls this approach crazy, pointing out that the physics of re-entry are chaotic. You cannot perfectly predict the turbulence, the gas chemistry, or the structural loads. Relying on a trajectory tweak to save a compromised heat shield is removing your safety margin. And the reason it terrifies experts like Camarda is that we have seen this play out before. The last time NASA normalized a known flaw, it ended up in a rain of debris over Texas. On January 16, 2003, the Space Shuttle Columbia launched from the Kennedy Space Center. 82 seconds into the flight, a piece of foam insulation broke off the external tank and struck the left wing. Engineers on the ground saw it happen on the video review, and it immediately caused alarm. They asked for satellite photos to check the damage. They wanted to know if the heat protection on the wing was compromised. Management said no. Program managers argued that foam strikes weren't new, and it had happened on previous flights, and nothing catastrophic had occurred. They normalized the danger. Because nothing had gone wrong before, they convinced themselves the risk wasn't real. They denied the request for photos and told the crew it was a non-issue. Just 16 days later, Columbia disintegrated over Texas during re-entry. 7 astronauts were killed when that tiny piece of foam tore a hole in the wing's leading edge. Superheated gas poured in, melting the structure from the inside out. And the parallels to Artemis II are chilling. A known flaw in the thermal protection system. evidence of real damage right from Artemis I, and yet the risk is still deemed acceptable. NASA officials argue that there is a backup. Beneath the avcoat, there's a carbon fiber skin. They believe that even if the shield cracks and spalls, the skin will hold long enough to get the crew home. They are betting everything on the redundancy. But redundancy is supposed to be for emergencies. It's not supposed to be part of the primary flight plan. If your plan A is the shield might break but plan B will save us, you're already in trouble. The independent safety bodies are waving red flags. The Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel has raised concerns. But the momentum of the program is a heavy thing to stop. The rocket is built. The capsule is stacked. The press releases are written. Why is the pressure to launch so intense that it overrides the instinct to fix a cracking heat shield? The answer lies thousands of miles away from Florida in Beijing. We are told that Artemis is about science. It's about water ice on the lunar South Pole. It's about preparing for Mars. And those things are true to an extent, but they are not the reason NASA is rushing. The United States is in a race, and China's space program, the CNSA, is moving with terrifying speed. They have a space station in orbit. They have landed rovers on the moon. They have returned samples. And they have explicitly stated their goal is to put taikonauts on the lunar surface by 2030. This is not the Apollo era. In the 1960s, the moon was empty. It was the finish line. You went there, you planted your flag, and you left. Today, the moon is viewed as territory. The lunar South Pole is prime real estate. It is the only place on the moon with water ice. Water means life for astronauts, breathable oxygen, and rocket fuel. The key to leaving the moon and going further, if you want to go to Mars, you want to launch from the moon, where gravity is weak and fuel is waiting in the ice. If China gets there first, the golden age of American space exploration might be over before it begins. NASA fears that if China gets there first, they will claim the prime landing sites. They'll set up exclusion zones. They'll establish a precedent of ownership. A 2-year delay to fix the heat shield isn't possible. Every day the mission stalls, China moves ahead. Picture American astronauts grounded while China launches a crewed mission. It's a political nightmare. So the directive comes down, go. And then there's the money. The Artemis program is projected to cost $93 billion by 2025. Each Space Launch System, or SLS mission, costs over $4 billion. That level of spending is sustainable only because the money flows into very specific places. SLS is built by contractors like Boeing, Northrop Grumman, and Aerojet Rocketdyne. Together, they employ thousands of people across Alabama, Florida, Mississippi, and Utah. Look at the engines on SLS and you see the past. They are RS-25s, the same engines that flew on the space shuttle. NASA had them sitting in storage. Instead of developing newer, cheaper, reusable technologies like SpaceX, Congress mandated the use of this old hardware to keep the existing workforce employed. This program is a jobs engine first and an exploration engine second. If NASA pauses for 2 years to redesign the heat shield, the assembly lines will slow down, the cash flow to the districts pauses, the political support wavers. But as the politicians fight over budgets, the 4 astronauts are preparing for a journey that has no safety net. Artemis II isn't a simple hop to the moon. It's a 10-day odyssey that exposes the crew to risks we have largely forgotten how to manage. When the space shuttle flew, or when astronauts go to the International Space Station today, they're in low Earth orbit. They are 250 miles up. If something goes wrong, like a leak, a fire, a medical emergency, they can be home in hours. They are within the Earth's magnetic field, safe from the worst of the sun's radiation. Artemis II does not have that safety net. It will travel 4,600 miles beyond the far side of the moon. If a solar flare erupts while they're out there, they're in trouble. The Orion capsule has a storm shelter, an area where the crew can huddle surrounded by supplies to block radiation, but it's not perfect. A massive coronal mass ejection could deliver a lifetime dose of radiation in hours. On Artemis I, the radiation environment caused power glitches in the capsule's computer systems. The electronics were hit by energized particles that flipped bits in memory, and it happened 24 times. NASA says they have patched the software, but they haven't changed the hardware. The radiation hasn't changed. The sun is currently in a period of high activity, approaching solar maximum, and there is no lifeboat. Once the engines fire for translunar injection, there is no turning back. Gravity takes the wheel. If life support drifts, they suffocate. If the engine fails for the return burn, they drift off into the dark forever. Every system on Orion must work, and we already know that they've had problems. Life support glitches on Artemis I, unexpected battery anomalies, a heat shield that's flawed. The crew knows this too. They are professionals. They accept the risk as part of their job, But there's a difference between the unpredictable dangers of exploring space and flying hardware that you already know has problems. NASA is called risk-averse by critics, especially compared to SpaceX. Yet, here is the strange truth. Even with that culture of caution, astronauts are still flying machines with known flaws. They are risk-averse when it comes to paperwork, process, and bureaucracy. But when it comes to the big existential risks, the heat shield, the radiation, the single point of failure rockets, they seem willing to look the other way. The Tiger team tasked with investigating the heat shield didn't call it safe. They updated the models, they claimed a better handle on the char loss, they said the trajectory change mitigates the risk. Mitigation is not a fix, it's a gamble. They're relying on a crack indication tool, a software simulation that tries to predict where the shield will fracture. But critics argue the tool is simplistic. It treats the material as uniform, when in reality, the properties of the char change every 2 seconds as the capsule falls through the atmosphere. NASA supporters like former astronaut Dr. Danny Olivas have admitted the shield is deviant. It's not behaving as designed. Yet the plan is to trust the trajectory change. Why? Because the alternative is admitting that after 15 years and nearly $100 billion, the SLS and Orion program still isn't ready. Canceling or delaying Artemis II indefinitely would be a death blow to NASA's current architecture. It would be an admission that the commercial sector, led by SpaceX, has truly overtaken the government agency. SpaceX is building Starship, a fully reusable stainless steel craft that could theoretically do the Artemis mission for a fraction of the cost. If Artemis II fails, or if it's grounded for years, Congress might pull the plug and simply buy rides from SpaceX. For the thousands of aerospace engineers and managers tied to SLS, that could mean losing everything that they've worked for. The pressure to launch is as much internal as external. They have to prove the system works, even if it is barely holding together. The real drama isn't liftoff, it's the moment 10 days later when the crew hits the atmosphere at 32 times the speed of sound. Engineers will pray. If it fails, the headlines will write themselves. NASA has its reasons, but are they worth the human cost? When the countdown hits 0, we'll find out. Now go check out the Challenger Space Shuttle disaster explained minute by minute, or click on this video instead.